how'd you get into ministry?
I got into ministry almost accidentally, but in retrospect I see that it was obviously God. When I started church planting with a man named Alex Montoya, I was asked by the church planting board when I had gotten called to the ministry. And I replied, well, when I became a Christian. Well, I know, but when did you get called to the ministry? I go, when I became a Christian. Because it was my understanding from the scriptures that all believers were a priesthood. Therefore, all believers were obligated to ministry. So I've never made a distinction between ministry and Christianity. To me, it's the same. So I think the notion that there's a special group of men and women who are called into ministry is something that ought to be set aside, because it harkens back to the professionalization of the clergy, where only the priests are the professional clergy and the rest of the believers are just spectators. I think we should continue to insist that the priesthood is for all of God's people, and God intends that every believer have ministry. And it doesn't matter if it's behind the pulpit ministry or if it's serving God in some unrecognized way. At least from man's perspective, all that we do as Christians is ministry. So I got involved in teaching and preaching because I started helping a man who started a Spanish church get one going, and I found myself teaching young people and teaching and discipling other individuals, and I started to develop a hunger for the Word and decided that I needed to go to Bible Institute, and I went with a Bible Institute for a while that was a nighttime Spanish-speaking Bible Institute, and then I went to an English Bible Institute. Then I decided that I needed more, so I went off to college, and I joined the military because I didn't have enough money to go to college, so I raised money by being in the military. And when I came out, I went into a 4-year Bible college, the Master's College in California, because I was impressed with John MacArthur. And he seemed to be on the Word, and so I wanted to be close to something like that. So that's where I got my first degree in the Bible. And then from there I went to get a master's degree from Azusa Pacific, which I don't really agree with theologically, but they gave me a great scholarship, so I couldn't turn it down. So during that whole time, I was always involved in some aspect of ministry, church planting, evangelization, visiting people, witnessing to people. So I think I wasn't intending to be a minister full-time. That wasn't my thinking, I remember. It never really even dawned on me as a prospect for making a living, so to speak. But I just knew that I had to stay involved in teaching the Word and find myself effective. It seems to be an effective ministry to try to teach and expound the Word of God to people in different ways. I gravitated towards English-speaking ministries because in the Hispanic world there's immigrant Hispanics who have immigrated to the United States, and they speak primarily Spanish. And I helped with the church plant there, but I realized that I needed to focus on English-speaking ministry to Hispanics, because I looked at myself, and many people like myself. We're American, we speak English primarily, but we're from a Spanish heritage. So I wanted to focus on that, so I began to reach out to churches that would consider hiring a minister who was bilingual and who had knowledge of both sides of the coin, English-speaking Hispanic and the immigrant. And so I sent out resumes to churches on the southwest border towns and in where I'm from, New Mexico. And I eventually ended up in New Mexico. A church was looking for a minister. It was a small church, and it turns out that I came there and I've been there for 25 years.